Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I'm joined today, like always, with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's going on, brother?
A lot, man, but let's not waste any more time, my man. I'm just excited as we continue this process in our podcast journey, from interviewing Adam Bird at Heroes Media Group to Mike Mall over at Social Media House to our special guest today. I couldn't be more stoked at how this podcast is actually coming together for us. So with that said, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Andrew, so you can introduce our special guest, Jason Feifer.
Awesome. Thanks, Clint. Yeah, Jason has a very interesting background. He is currently the editor-in-chief of a little magazine you may have heard of called Entrepreneur Mag. He is the host of 3 podcasts. One of them is Pessimists Archive, another is Hush Money, and another is Problem Solvers. He's been the editor of a few other widely known publications, including Fast Company, and he's written for ESPN, GQ, and New York Times, to name a few. We're very excited to have him on the show. Welcome, Jason.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we really appreciate you being on here and talking to us and talking to our audience. So that's really awesome. Cool. So we know you're a busy man, and we'll just jump right into it. We have a few questions, and so I'll kick it off with the first one here. So you write a lot about entrepreneurship for business, and I've also read that you've written a few things about the mindset of entrepreneurship, as it's not just applied to business. So where do you get your entrepreneurial mindset, and what drew you to write about entrepreneurship?
Well, I get my entrepreneurial mindset from, I think, trial and error. I started as you may be hearing a baby in the background. That's life as working from home now.
Times we're living in right now.
Yeah. So, I started in community news, writing for tiny newspapers, and I knew I wanted to work my way up, and I was impatient. I wanted to move. I wanted to move now. I knew that if I just stuck around and did exactly what was kind of expected, the normal path that all my peers were taking, that it was going to be a slow ride. And I wasn't interested in a slow ride. I was interested in a fast ride. And so I just started taking risks and seeing them pay off. I quit a couple jobs. I freelanced a lot. I just took a lot of risks. And then in looking back upon them, I realized that those risks were the things that defined me and my career and set me apart from everyone else that I was working with. And I started to try to infuse that and be strategic about it and think about what calculated risks can I take? What can I do to identify goals and then figure out counterintuitive ways to reach them? And it was only later in my journey when I realized that these are the kinds of things that entrepreneurs do. This is a natural part of the toolkit of entrepreneurs. At the time, it was just my own way of satisfying my cravings for more and more and more, and to do more and be able to accomplish more than I thought I could accomplish. And so it was only a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, that I got the opportunity to work at Entrepreneur. And that's when it all came together for me. I honestly didn't realize that what I was doing were inhabiting the concepts and the mindsets of successful entrepreneurs. But eventually I started talking to them, and I started writing for them, and I realized that the thing that drove me is the thing that drives them. And from there, I felt like we could have a really valuable relationship and conversation.
That's awesome. That's awesome, dude. It just seems like hearing what you just said is all about taking action, right? And being impatient and then just making it happen. And that's really right. the entrepreneurial mindset that you had at an early stage.
That's right. You have to be patient and impatient at the same time, and you have to balance those out, right? You have to be patient in that you have to know that there are things that you don't know that you have to learn, and that learning takes time, and that you're not going to get everything that you're looking for all at once, or ever, maybe. But I think you need to balance that with the impatience of not taking the normal route, of being willing to risk things, to try new things, to discard things that worked today, but worked, yesterday, but don't work today. You have to know that you are going somewhere and that you are going to do whatever it takes to get there. You balance that patience with impatience, and that's what works.
Man, I love that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, that balance is tough to strike too, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a learning process. You figure it out as you go.
Yeah,
definitely. So Jason, man, in an article you wrote called "Embrace Your Setbacks, Use Them to Your Advantage," you said if you've been set back, it just means you have a great story to tell, right? Yeah. So is there a setback that you've actually experienced in your own life or in your entrepreneurial journey that has turned out to be critical to the path you're currently on now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have setbacks all the time, and certainly, I mean, we're talking during like a global setback. Everybody's experiencing some kind of setback in their career right now, and I am quite sure that 10 years from now, everyone is going to define their stories by what they do in this period of time. We all, every time we had an idea of ourselves or a vision of ourselves and it in reality didn't match it, we have to step up to that moment and take in what we have, what we don't have, and what's needed from us now, and then put all that together into a new vision of ourselves that works with what's available. I have had many of those. I mean, I think back to my earliest times. My very first job, I hated it. I worked at this tiny community newspaper doing like nothing. I mean, I was doing stuff, but I was writing about stuff that I just didn't care about. It's like, how many times can you write about the high school or middle school play without just, wanting to quit? And eventually that just started to show, I thought I was hiding it, but I wasn't. And my boss just came up to me one day and said, "You hate this and you're miserable here, and you're also not doing the work that is required of you. So here's like an official letter. I'm putting you on notice. You need to clean up your act or I'm firing you." And so you know what I did? I quit. Like, I didn't clean up my act, because the thing was that like getting better at that job wasn't going to get me anywhere. I wanted to work at these large publications, and nobody at these large publications was ever reading that little paper called the Gardner News and discovering my reviews of the middle school play and saying, "Oh, well, this is the guy that we got to hire for the New York Times." Exactly. So I had to, like, it just wasn't, why would I clean up my act? Why would I get better at that job? I didn't need to. I needed to get better at another job. I needed to go to where I wanted to be. And so that's what I did. I quit that job. I sat in my bedroom. I spent 9 months cold pitching editors and coming up with ideas and teaching myself freelancing and magazine writing and all this stuff that I didn't know. And that was the foundation of the career that I have now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, it's, I think a lot of times entrepreneurs don't make the best employees, or not always anywhere. Unless you're really doing something that you're so passionate about as an employee. But yeah, I think it's that, that wanting to learn and to grow and to be a couple steps ahead of where you are. And if you see that, you really don't have that potential with where you're working or what you're doing, then yeah, you just have to get out and do something else.
Yeah. Or you could also figure out ways to build yourself and your skills in a way that is valuable for you in the long term, but complementary with your job in the short term. And there's so many different ways of doing that. I've done it over and over and over again. I mean, I do it now. I mean, not literally now because the world has been shut down, but for example, in a normal world, I do a lot of speaking at conferences, and I am at once representing Entrepreneur. I think I'm doing a good job for Entrepreneur, but let's be honest, I'm also doing that because that's a great future career, is building out a public speaking career, so that, maybe one day in some future, I never need to go to anybody's office because I'm just in demand as a speaker. Now, like, those are two things that I'm doing at the same time. I'm serving my employer now, but I'm also thinking about the skill sets and the connections that I need to build for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're just building on, you're taking all your experiences now and building them up to what you can use for the rest of your entrepreneurial journey, because it's going to be a long one, and I'm sure it's going to take some twists and turns that you can't even think about right now. But yeah, all these experiences now help you later.
Huge amount of leverage.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've interviewed a lot of people who are celebrities and pretty well-known people on Entrepreneur. Really could be anyone, from somebody who's well-known or somebody who's not quite as known. But what's the best piece of advice you think you've gotten from any one of those entrepreneurs, and that you use on a daily basis, and you think, man, I can't, that one thing that one person said is something that I just use all the time? Is there anything that you have like that?
Yeah, I got a million of things like that. But one that jumps out to me immediately is I was talking to Malcolm Gladwell, best-selling author, podcaster, New Yorker journalist. And I had asked him, because as a peer of his, I was curious how he filters his projects. How does he think of what he should and shouldn't do? What is a Malcolm Gladwell project to him? And because, Malcolm Gladwell has a brand and he has a voice and he does things that kind of feel distinctively Malcolm Gladwell. And I was curious how he defined that for himself. And he said he doesn't do that. He doesn't think of himself as having one particular kind of voice. He doesn't think of himself as a brand. And then he said this line that I immediately jotted down. He said, self-conceptions are powerfully limiting. Which is to say that if you have some particular vision of what you are, some particular definition of what you are, well, then you're going to close off all of these other opportunities that don't fit that narrow window. And so if self-perception is powerfully limiting, what he prefers to do is not define himself, not define what a Malcolm Gladwell story is. And yeah, sure, there is clearly some definition in his head, or there's something that he's being guided by, but he's leaving open the possibility for all these other things. And that is the reason why I think he's been successful in so many mediums, because he's willing to try different things. And I love that so much. And so I wrote it down, and it's hanging on my wall in my office that maybe one day I will see again.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like that. That's good. I mean, it's easy to kind of pigeonhole yourself and put the blinders on, or just feel a certain way. I mean, there's fear wrapped up in that too. If you're fearing, public speaking, let's say. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't be able to do what you do, or they would feel like they can't, right? But, they really have to, embrace the fear, get past it. And, if it's something that they really want to do, then, then they have to have that perception of themselves that they can do it, which I think that's really cool.
Yeah, man, I would agree. Jason, we value your time, brother, and we really appreciate you jumping on it. And so I want to ask you this one question that, before we jump off of here and hop off and bring this to conclusions, what's the one piece of advice or tip that you would give our listeners to add value to them on their entrepreneurial journey, man?
I would say there's this line that Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, uses, which is called permanent beta. And it's another thing that's hanging on my wall in my office that I will see at some point when we're able to go outside again. And what it means is to think of yourself as always a product in beta. You're never a finished product. You're never one thing. You're always revising. Always, always, always. The permanent state of yourself is beta. Permanent impermanence. And that is what's required now more than ever. I mean, we are in a moment of extreme disruption, but another way of thinking about that is that we're in a moment of extreme change. And even when this settles down, and it will, entrepreneurs will still always be in a moment of extreme change. It's the nature of doing what it is that we do. And so the only way to get through it, and the only way to think properly, is to be thinking about yourself as a constant work in progress. It's why I love that phrase, permanent beta. And so my advice to your listeners would be to really ingest that and to really internalize that, and to think right now, what can I be for this moment? And once this moment is past, think, what can I be for this next moment? And make sure that you don't calcify into any one thing. This you had mentioned my podcasts. I have this podcast called Pessimists Archive. Pessimists Archive is a history show about why people resist new things, and it looks back at why people resisted the innovations that today we think of as commonplace, like the teddy bear or car or bicycle. And what you see over and over again are people who are just afraid of change because they cannot see what's coming next. And the thing is, nobody can see what's coming next, but you just have to trust that you're going to be able to manage it. We're all able to see the loss of something that we have today, but we're not able to see the gain that comes tomorrow. So you have to just trust that that gain is there and that you have the ability to help shape it. So that's what I would say.
Appreciate it, man.
That's great. Yeah, it's very valuable. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, I thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
That baby is still crying in the background.
You gotta
go take care of it, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll wrap it up, but really appreciate it, Jason. Thank you so much for being on the show, for taking the time, and look forward to talking to you soon.
That sounds good. Hey, thanks guys. Be well.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jason. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Jason's working on, check out jasonfeifer.com. That's JASONFEIFER.com. Make sure to also check out our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com. I will not spell that for you guys. And subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and any other major podcast directory, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel under That Entrepreneur Life. You can also find us on heroesmediagroup.com by clicking on the show tab. Also, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Man, what an awesome episode, guys, to end this off on. And we also want to give a special shout out to our family and friends, to include all of our listeners, our followers and subscribers. Hopefully you're getting value out of this. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as we add value to any entrepreneur's journey. Don't forget, guys, to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.